Hello and welcome to Let's Talk Legion. In this video we're going to talk about all things Legion based. We're going to be talking about Legion itself, the expansion as a whole. We're then going to be talking about the pre-patch, the pre-expansion that was released just a week ago. And then finally we're going to be talking about all of the hotfixes they've made to account for any bugs that occurred. I'm going to be pointing out all of the ones that I thought were quite interesting and really are going to affect your gameplay. Okay, first of all, let's talk about Legion itself. I'm going to start by talking about, as we all want to hear, the Demon Hunter. Okay, so the Demon Hunter, as you can see the kind of specs of it on screen now, it can play as a tank or a damage. It uses Fury as its main resource. It's going to be using leather armor. And its available kind of weapons are those type of one-handed type weapons that you'll see, including Warglaives. And that's quite interesting that they'll be adding that as a new weapon to the game, most specifically for Demon Hunters. The Demon Hunter has two available races. These are the Night Elf and the Blood Elf. That's for your Horde and Alliance. And the specs possible for the Demon Hunter to play are the Havoc and Vengeance. Havoc being the DPS, Vengeance being the tank. I think it's very interesting that the devs decided to only use two specs, but hopefully these specs are very fleshed out and have a lot of detail to them. Now, as you'll be seeing on screen now, there are three main details for the Demon Hunter, like many other classes, but we'll be getting into the Demon Hunter ones now. So first of all, there's Spectral Sight. This is because Demon Hunters are actually blind, but it also talks about being able to see those that hide behind obstacles because of this. This is because they rely on that magically augmented sight to detect their enemies. So that could be quite interesting, most likely being able to see enemies that go through walls. I'd suspect maybe that's more in PvE than it is in PvP, but that's very interesting. Demon Hunters also have the ability to double jump and vault when in or out of combat. This is very interesting, just a minor little thing that I think players will find quite useful when getting around that kind of thing. Demon Hunters also have the ability to glide. Now this could be seen as very useful in battlegrounds and also just generally getting around the map, but for other players, I think we all know there's nothing a Goblin Glider can't fix. And finally, and in my opinion most importantly out of the three, Demon Hunters have Metamorphosis. This is kind of like the Warlock ability, but it allows them to essentially evolve into a bigger form than themselves, doing more damage. I'd assume that they gain more fury when they're in this form. They're also more swift and have a lot more health. So that is the Demon Hunter out the way as a whole. But now we'll be moving on to the other stuff in Legion itself. Moving on to where Legion will be set. Now you'll see on the screen now the Broken Isles. This is going to be your main place for all Legion questing. Now this map looks similar to the Draenor questing area and I'd assume works the same kind of way. The general questing that you get every time, except this time you'll be going from 100 to 110. And finally, the new big thing in Legion, artifact weapons. Now on screen you'll be seeing the Ashbringer. Now this is the artifact weapon for the Paladin. It's a nice two-handed sword, but what's interesting that we get to learn from looking at the Ashbringer is that it will be able to adapt to your playstyle, having 3 different options for how your character plays. Now this weapon gains power as you do, which is quite interesting. So essentially, you're going to be leveling with it from maybe level 100 to a level 110. You've got to assume that there'll be some better weapons that you can find, but it will be a very nice transmog piece. On to the pre-patch news. Now, one of the big bits that occurred in the pre-patch was the transmog update. This really changed the way that you can transmog and made it 100 times easier for people to do. Now, instead of collecting the items and keeping them in your bags, maybe storing them in the vault, now all you have to do is collect them once and they'll be with you forever. You'll be able to transmog to that gear whenever you like. I think this is very nice, should have been in the game a long time ago. I'm just glad to see it's in now. What's also quite interesting is now it's much easier to queue for what you want in a dungeon. If you're feeling like you want to play as the DPS but you're currently in the tank spec, you can queue as the DPS and the second you teleport into that dungeon, you'll be switched to your DPS spec. You can still be playing around as a tank, you can still be doing your quests as a tank, but the second you get in that dungeon, it will switch you to the role, and the second you leave, it will switch you back to the tank. And finally, and I mentioned this in the Blizzard Weekly video, the Demon Hunter will be available very shortly for players to actually play. Now this is for players that pre-purchased the Legion expansion, and they will get to play the Demon Hunter in the coming weeks, no later than August the 17th globally. Now, one of the interesting things about this is that the Demon Hunter will be starting at level 98, and I'd assume that what you get to play is the questing of 98 to 100, and this will be the Demon Hunter starting area before you get to go off with your friends when Legion launches and play more with them as your level 100. Now on to the hotfixes. There are 4 major hotfixes that I picked out after looking through loads and loads of different news articles that I thought were the most important things for you guys to know, just to keep you up to date with Blizzard news. Now one of them is the bug that I was noticing a fair bit when I was playing in Battlegrounds, and that was that players were immune when they stood in their graveyard, which was very weird and very irritating, but now don't worry guys, that is fixed. You can no longer just stand in a graveyard and be immune to all damage. Shamans have been receiving major buffs for PvP. You'll see the 2 buffs that were released on screen now. One of them is more about increasing their general stats, 13% more intellect, 50% more armor, 50% less critical strike, which is pretty bad, but 70% more mastery. So very nice. The other one is about healing. The other one is increasing their healing in PvP combat. Now this is for Resto Shamans, but I think it's very interesting because you never really saw them before, but I hope this brings them up a bit more with an average of 30% increased healing. Now the final thing to talk about, which I'm very happy with, is the fact that Cold Weather Flying now costs 50 gold, but is automatically learned when you reach level 80. Now this is very nice because Cold Weather Flying was one of those ones that I think it cost around 3,000 gold. You never really were too bothered to get it, but it just irritated you a little bit. You could never use Cold Weather Flying. But now, you instantly unlock it when you reach level 80. So that's all I have to talk about for Let's Talk Legion. If you enjoyed it, then make sure you click that like button and subscribe to the channel. I really appreciated the support on the last video. Let's hope we can do the same on this video. There's another video coming out soon that will be Hearthstone related, so hopefully you guys will enjoy that one as well. I'll see you guys next time.